So today, the name of our presentation is Getting to the Heart of the Matter. And here's what I'm going to share with you over the next 45 minutes. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. I am a heart attack survivor, so I'm going to give you a little peek behind the curtains there, what I learned after my heart attack, what I did next, and what you can do now, which is really why you're with me today, is because you want to know what you can do to improve your heart health. Before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone that the information provided during this program is intended for educational purposes only. It is never meant to diagnose or suggest treatment of any kind for any illness. If you have symptoms or health concerns, please talk to your healthcare provider about those. If you're experiencing any symptoms of a heart attack or stroke, call 911 for emergency assistance. Do not delay, because time is heart muscle. Also wanted to let you all know we are recording this. We do have a YouTube channel, so frequently we will record these webinars. First of all, we will send out the link to all of you who are watching. So if you want to watch it again or share it, we'd love for you to share it. And for those who may have had a schedule change and they weren't able to join us for whatever reason, they'll be able to do that on the replay. So let's get started. This picture is me. That was roughly about 6 months before my heart attack at the age of 50. And one of the things I like to share, and we do share this message a lot with women, but we talk to women and men, but women specifically fall into this the same realm. But one of the things that I asked myself after my heart attack in 2012 was, how did I miss warning signs for over a year? And the answer is quite simply that I did not know that those were warning signs, and I'll explain why. Now, first of all, you have to understand, I knew I was at higher risk because of my family history of early heart disease. My dad had had a heart attack at the age of 42. He'd had a heart transplant at the age of 51. My grandfather had been 45 when he had a heart attack that disabled him for the rest of his life. Uncles, cousins, mainly the men in the family, had all had some kind of cardiac issues, whether it was cholesterol, high blood pressure. They may have had stents. Some had a heart attack, more than one. And so this was a big part of our family history. And I grew up with heart disease because of my father and my grandfather. And I thought I had a pretty good understanding of what heart disease was. If you combine that with the fact that at one time I was a marketing director for a regional Red Cross chapter, and my responsibility was the CPR, AED, and first aid classes that we did out in the community and for companies. That was my job. And so I knew a lot about those warning signs because I talked about them out in the community all the time. However, when I did that for a living, it was before we began having the conversations about women's heart health. Very different. I also, when I was going through a lot of health issues at this time, by the time this photograph was taken, I had left a very good full-time job because I was having so many health issues. Leading up to that, my job had changed somewhat. I was sitting more because I was working in a cubicle and it was a lot more sitting. I was working a lot of very long hours, a lot of stressful hours. By the time I went home, I was exhausted, and my husband and I were empty nesters. So it was easier just to grab something to eat or, just kind of eat out quite more than we usually had. The kids were all gone. And so that's the cycle that I found myself in. I wasn't as active as I used to be. And within this same period, I had developed severe muscular and skeletal pain and was referred to a rheumatologist because the diagnosis was fibromyalgia and osteoarthritis. I was in pain. severe pain 24/7. At this time, I was on 2 opioids a day, an anti-inflammatory, which my cardiologist believed contributed to my heart attack so young, and also a sleep aid that basically they were knocking me out every night so that I would sleep to try to get the pain under control. I was in a lot of agony all the time. And, but all of that pointed us not toward issues with my heart, because everything I was feeling was, the physical manifestations of the inflammation. At this time, if you looked at my numbers, so one of the things that we encourage people to do, we want you to know your numbers. That's the first part of understanding how to improve your heart health, is by getting your biometric screening. And so when you looked at me on paper, when you looked at my blood pressure and my cholesterol and my glucose, none of that was remarkable. Now, one doctor might look at my numbers and say, it's a bit high, let's put you on a statin. Another one would look at it and say, no, it's not really that high. Let's not do that. Just, exercise more and eat better. Watch your stress, those things. And so I was in that middle ground. My hypertension issue was not high blood pressure that was high all the time. It was up and down, roller coaster blood pressure. So they put me on a beta blocker to smooth those things out, and that helped. But the stress that I was under, which created all the cortisol in my system, which led to the widespread inflammation and the weight gain and all of the other issues, was certainly not helping the situation. By this time, I had put on over 20 pounds of extra weight that I did not need for my frame. So my BMI was out of whack, my waistline, everything. And I was going through premenopause at the same time. 50 years of age was not fun for me. I'll just be very honest. But I survived to tell the story. Other symptoms that I was having at this time, chronic fatigue. Now, I'm not talking about the fatigue that you get when you put in too many hours at work, or you've done too much around the house, or you worked out in the yard too long. I'm talking about that kind of fatigue that you wake up with, you go to bed with, you never get past. Days it was hard to even get out of bed. The chronic fatigue where you really, you weren't living life. It wasn't a matter of enjoying life. You weren't living life. You were just kind of existing. That's where I was. And it seemed like it just kept getting worse and worse. The inability to sleep, that was a warning sign. And I didn't know it. But my inability to sleep had me in this terrible cycle. I had low vitamin D, which I know isn't all that unusual, because most American adults and youth have a vitamin D deficiency. That's why it's important to get that checked. But that also is a red flag, especially in women. I had an elevated C-reactive protein, which meant I had inflammation in my body. Well, we knew that because I could feel it. What I didn't know is what it was doing to my heart. Premature menopause, for women who complete menopause earlier, they're at higher risk for heart disease. Mine ended a few months before my 50th birthday. It just stopped one day, and that was it. And I thought that was a good thing. I didn't know that should have been a sign. And preeclampsia, I never had preeclampsia during my pregnancies, but I wanted to mention that one here, because if you did during your pregnancy, then that puts you at higher risk for heart disease. But all of these are things that were red flags about women's heart health. But as I was going through these things, I kept reflecting on what I was experiencing physically, but comparing it to that of my dad or other men, or the outdated warning signs of heart attacks, because it was still based on men. It wasn't based on women. And so it was a matter of not knowing those signs that got overlooked. I remember sitting down in the specialist office. I was in and out of doctor's offices for well over a year, trying to get my health back. And I remember sitting in her office one day and I'm crying. I am so frustrated. I am distraught. I just don't know what else to do. I'm taking all of this medication. I'm getting worse. And I remember talking to her about the pain between my shoulder blades and the fatigue, how debilitating it was. I'm a classically trained vocalist. The last few years of my vocal training was in opera. So I can sustain notes. That's not a problem. And at this point in my life, I was having to turn down invitations to perform, which I love to do, because I simply couldn't get enough breath. And my husband kept saying, there's something really wrong. If you can't get enough breath for you to sing, something's really wrong. And you go to the doctors and you tell them this. I talked to her about all of this, and I remember her stopping. She opened up my file. She looked at it. And she said, well, honey, you're 50. It's just menopause. Well, okay. That sounded better than it's your heart. But truth be told, I was on the path for a heart attack. And a few months after she made that statement, I had the heart attack. My point is, as women, as men, sometimes we have trouble seeing the warning signs. So do physicians, especially that don't deal with this on a regular basis. And that's why I love to educate people on this subject so that they know. So what did I learn after surviving a heart attack at the age of 50? The first thing that I learned after my heart attack was that pretty much everything I thought I knew about heart disease was from a man's perspective. Again, I was comparing myself to what my dad had done and what other male members of my family had done. I was looking at the information that I had been trained on for CPR and AED, and that was outdated. It didn't talk about women's health issues. And I simply did not know what was unique about women's heart health. So that's the first thing that I knew, and that set me on a course to learn more. The next thing that I learned is that 90%, 9 out of 10 women in this country over the age of 20 already have at least one risk factor for heart disease. So if there are, say, 10 women watching this webinar right now, 9 of you already have at least one risk factor. Do you know what it is? If you have that family history of early heart disease, that's as young as 18, because did you know that most teenagers in our country, by the time they are a senior in high school, they already have one risk factor for heart disease? 1 out of 4 teenagers in this country is pre-diabetic, and they don't know it. Those are things that we need to consider and apply this to our children too. Now, I've updated these numbers from where I did all of my initial research back in 2012, but here's the latest stats. About 18.2 million Americans over the age of 20. I mean, at my age, I think 20 is being a kid, right? But 18.2 million Americans over the age of 20 have heart disease right now. Almost half of African American women in our country over the age of 20 already have heart disease. 1 in 2, half. That is a tremendous number of our African American sisters that already have heart disease. And the frightening thing is, most of them don't know it. Most American women and men do not know that they have heart disease until they have a cardiac event, or worse, their family finds out when they die. And that's a sad statement in this day and age of instant information. I also learned that about 805,000 men and women suffer a heart attack in the US every year. That number is actually low because, according to recent studies, like through the CDC, if we add in the number of silent heart attacks that they have identified to this number, you're looking at closer to 1.5 million heart attacks in this country every year. About 605,000 of those are going to be first-time heart attacks. And when you look at that number, that is a sobering number. Recently, just, within this last week, we crossed a milestone in the US for having over 500,000 deaths due to COVID-19. That's just been within this last year. But I want you to see the bigger picture here when it comes to heart disease, because we lose more than that every year to heart disease. Every year in this country, we are losing 655,000 parents and spouses, siblings, aunts, uncles, best friends, coworkers to a largely preventable disease. For those of us who have a heart attack before the age of 65, like I did, 80% of us will not survive the first one. There's no do-overs. There's no second chances. We are simply here one day and gone the next. And that happens day in, day out, year in, year out. But notice the words that I put there: largely preventable. Don't lose sight of that, okay? Less than half of the women in this country know what I just shared with you. And we focus on the women many times in our presentations because we still have a very big disparity in the US when it comes to the research, the diagnosis, and the treatment of women when it comes to their heart health. And if you are a woman of color, it's even worse. Women of color that go to the doctor or go to the ER with symptoms, the studies that are out there as far as the number that receive aspirin, that get an EKG, that are prescribed cholesterol medications, the ones that have cardiac events that are not prescribed cardiac rehabilitation, the numbers are dismal. It's frightening to see that in this day and age, we have not caught up with this, but this is where we are. But this is the happy part. Remember, I said largely preventable. This is a great part. So after my heart attack, about all they would let me do was go to cardiac rehabilitation, which was enough. That was 3 times a week. And they put me through my paces. But I did a lot of research because of my background, and I'm a research maven. I love to research things. I can't stand not knowing something. So Google on my phone makes me extremely happy. But this really changed my life, this one statement, because I did all of this research. I wanted to understand how I had missed the warning signs. I had a lot of women chasing me down in the grocery stores, at community events, calling me, emailing me, and they were all asking the same types of questions. And these were professional, well-educated women, all asking the same question. And I told my husband, I said, it shows me that I'm not alone. There's a lot of women out there just like me that simply do not know this information. So as I'm reading and I'm studying and I'm trying to understand this and get a handle on it, I come to this one sentence, that about 80% of risk factors that lead to heart disease can be prevented or managed. So if I held a webinar and I said, okay, 80% of the risk factors that lead to this disease, let's use cancer as an example, because that's a scary one. If I said that we could do this to prevent cancer, I would have hundreds of people on this webinar. Here's the thing. The folks that advocate for cancer causes, they have done a remarkable job of raising awareness, of educating, of getting people screened early. They have taught us that early detection saves lives. But the fact of the matter is, heart disease will kill 6 times more women this year than all of the cancers combined. Early detection saves lives, but we don't hear this message when we talk about heart disease in women or men. The truth of the matter is, through education, early detection, and early intervention, about half of those people that die every year from heart disease, we could save them. I was watching a special on television last night about heart disease, and one of the cardiologists said, look, today, people don't have to die from heart disease. It doesn't have to happen. But there's some things that we have to do and that we have to take responsibility for. But first, we have to know about them. which is why you're here today. So this gives me hope. This actually just turned everything around for me. All of those statistics are scary, and I've got even scarier ones out there when it comes to women's heart health. But what I want to focus on is this four-letter word, hope. This is where the hope comes in, because if 80% of the risk factors that lead to heart disease can be prevented or managed, that means we have the ability to win the fight against our number one killer. And that is what we are focused on. So what did I do after my heart attack? Well, I educated myself. I was not happy with the excuse of, I just didn't know. That's not acceptable to me. I asked a whole lot of questions. I made phone calls. I had meetings even with some of the leaders of national women's health, heart health organizations in the country. I wanted to understand how I missed this. I wanted to learn what I could do to share this message of hope with other women and men so that they did not have to go through what I did. 5 more minutes on my office floor or 5 more minutes in the back of that ambulance, I wouldn't be talking to you today. I was 5 minutes away from a body bag. So for me, I'm extremely passionate about it, but this is, when I say it's close to my heart, this is very close to my heart. This is what gets me up every day, is that I get to share this message so that you can have hope and you can share this message of hope. After my heart attack, I also made positive lifestyle changes. I went to cardiac rehabilitation and I graduated. Most women in this country do not go and they do not complete it after they've had a cardiac event. One of the things that I learned early on after my heart attack was that 42% of women who have a heart attack at the age that I did, they don't live past 1 year. When I heard that became my first benchmark. I was going to make it to that 1 year anniversary, and I did. And that's 8.5 years ago. So it can be done. But you have to take control of that, and you have to be intentional. And of course, I began sharing my journey with others. As people heard about my story, they wanted to hear about it. They wanted to learn how they could protect their heart health. And I've been happy to share that. In about 6 months after my heart attack was passed, my cardiologist cleared me for normal activities. Okay, so he didn't ask what normal was. When he found out that we had decided to start a nonprofit organization, I think he kind of rethought that. But 6 months after my heart attack, we incorporated the Heart2Heart Foundation as a nonprofit in the state of South Carolina. Of course, we have people who follow us all over the country, but our mission was very simple. It was to increase awareness and educate people about heart disease, but more than that, to get them to take action that would prevent heart attack, stroke, and premature death. We're losing too many of us way too young. All right, so here's the great part. This is why you tuned in today, because you want to know what you can do, right? I'm going to tell you. It starts with you. I can't do this for you. Your spouse can't. Your siblings, your parents, your BFF, your coworkers. You are the only one that can do this for you. And this is something you need to do for yourself. You need to take the pledge right now, today, for better heart health. Now, are you going to stumble every now and then? Are you going to miss the mark sometimes? Sure, we're human. We all do. But you need to make a commitment to you first. It's kind of like when you get on the airplane and, you know, the flight attendants up front and they're doing their pre-flight checks with you and they tell you, okay, if at any point we lose cabin pressure, the oxygen mask drops down, put it on your face first before you put it on another person. Now, women are notoriously bad about, we're going to take care of everybody else first. Everybody else comes first. That's just our nature. We're nurturers. That's just the way we're programmed. The truth of the matter is, this is something you need to do for yourself first. Then you can apply it to your children, to your spouse, to your family, to your friends, to your community, and we can begin to turn this thing around. But this is a decision that you have to make today for yourself. Here's another thing I want you to do. I want you to eliminate this 4-letter word from your vocabulary. It's not a bad word, but this word has been used, and I think for a lot of us, it carries like a negative connotation. It carries a sense of failure. It carries a sense of, well, this probably isn't going to work anyway. It just doesn't really feel like success. Although the word in itself is a fine word, it's just been used, I think, sometimes to hamper us from being successful. And that word is diet. Stop thinking about diets. Stop chasing diets. It comes from the Greek word dieta, and all it means is way of life or lifestyle. That's all it means. But because of marketing and overuse, I think it's really come to mean something that we strive to attain, but we can't. And it just means the way that we eat, how we consume food. It came around about the 13th century in the 1200s is when it first showed up on the horizon. But I think in modern history, it's just really been marketed to the sense that you hear the word diet and it almost seems like a drudgery. What I want you to think of doing for yourself is to create a new way of life. You know how we start the new year and we're going to turn over a new leaf and we're going to join that gym, or we buy that new piece of exercise equipment that holds our laundry, for the week until we, do laundry. But this is something we need to do. We need to focus on a new way of life, because diets are going to come and go. You may try this one for a couple of months and this one for a couple of months, and it doesn't create positive, permanent change in your life. What we want to do is to create positive, permanent change in your life, and it starts here, right here. So once you have got it here and you get it here, you're going to get it everywhere else. Because honestly, the things that we're going to tell you to do for your heart health will improve your overall health and wellness. It can help prevent 40 different diseases, including several forms of cancer. So take care of the heart first, and then everything else will follow. We're going to go real simple. Too many times we go all gung-ho and we start good, but life gets in the way. We get tired, we get distracted, we get discouraged, and we just stop. So start with small changes. Let's do baby steps, depending on where you are in your journey. I like to start where people are right now, today, because everybody's at a different spot, but we all start at the same spot, which is the beginning. So start with those small changes. First of all, I want you to incorporate more plants into your eating plan. More fruits and vegetables. About half your plate or better should be fruits and vegetables. And I would suggest, and it's something that I do, and it actually works, is instead of the big 12-inch plate, serve yourself on a 9-inch plate. When you go out to eat, go ahead and get that to-go box, take half of it, put it in the box. Because once you see your portion sizes, you're going to see that's a big part of this too. If you eat meats, make sure they are lean meats. You can do fish 2 times a week. Salmon and chunk-like tuna are good sources. I would limit, and I do personally, limit the beef and the pork. For me, I don't consume a lot of meat throughout the week. I keep my meats limited. And on Mondays, I eat no meat at all. That's a thing every Monday, and it sometimes goes into the rest of the week too. I don't miss it. It took me a while to kind of reprogram myself, but once I did, it's not something that I miss. I can take it or leave it. I enjoy other protein alternatives like quinoa, portobello mushrooms, beans, legumes. There's other ways to get your protein, believe me. But if you do meat, you need to watch your portion size. I love those commercials where they come out with this gargantuan steak. And when I see it, I know portion size. And immediately my comment is, wow, that could feed like 3 or 4 people, because it's too much really for one person at one sitting. Incorporate whole grains, fiber, and healthy fats into your eating plan. You got to limit the junk food. You've got to see junk food, or, as those foods that you eat as a treat on occasion, but in our standard American diet, we call it the SAD diet. And yes, I did use the D word. That's mainly what we're eating. We're not eating real food. You need to become a label reader. We are a society of fast or convenience foods, which is really highly processed foods. And when you look at those labels, the easiest thing to do, and we have some educational materials on how to read labels. We're going to do a webinar on that as well. But when you look at those labels, you want to pay attention to the amount of calories, the carbohydrates, the serving sizes, the added sugar, the added sodium, what kind of fats it has in it. Those are all things you want to know. But what you really want to look at is if it comes in a bag, a box, or a bottle, you need to flip that over and go down to the ingredients. On those ingredients, if you see more than 10 ingredients and you can't pronounce the words, leave it on the shelf. It's what we call Frankenfoods because it was created in a lab. The flavors, the colors, the smells, everything about that food is made in a lab. It's not real food. It's not going to nourish your food like real food can. You need to focus on real whole food, not things that have been overly processed and packaged. Not everything is bad. You can find healthy foods in those aisles, but we suggest that you shop on the parameters of the aisles. Shop the fruits and vegetables and the dairy and the meat sections, and then get what you need from those inside sections. For us, when we go, grocery shopping in person, there are aisles of the grocery store I haven't been down in years because we don't eat those items. And that does make a difference. But become a label reader. That's very important, not just for the things that you buy, but the things you also consume from restaurants. Prefer water or unsweetened beverages. We really need to reduce or eliminate the sugary drinks out of our eating plans. That's where we get most of our empty calories. I'll give you an example. So one 12-ounce can of soda, just one, has 10.5 teaspoons of added sugar. I remember doing an experiment one time. I was doing a presentation for a middle school in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And I took in my mad scientist stuff. I had everything laid out, and I had some regular sodas, and I had my sugar, which the only reason I have a bag of sugar in my house is to do this little experiment. But I asked the students, I said, okay, I'm going to hand you an unsweetened glass of tea. How many teaspoons of added sugar should I put in there to make it taste good? Most of them said 1 or 2. There was one kid that said 3, but I think he was just pulling my leg. But when I told them that we were going to add 10.5 teaspoons of added sugar, and I added it, I asked who wanted to taste that. I had no takers. Nobody wanted to taste that because they knew it was going to be awful. But yet when we pop that top and we're drinking those regular sodas, that's what we're putting into our bodies. Long term, we are going to reap what we sow. Our bodies are going to catch up with us. So the sugary drinks, and it's not just soft drinks. It could be our famous Southern sweet tea, our fruit juices. So everything that you consume, you need to know what you're putting in your body. And while we're talking about managing sugar, let's talk about how much you should have. According to the American Heart Association, this is their recommendation that women and children should have no more than 6 teaspoons of added sugar per day. That's about 24 grams of sugar. There's 4 grams in each teaspoon. And for men, they can have 9 teaspoons of added sugar or 36 grams per day. So as you are shopping, as you're picking out what you're going to eat, say you're in the grocery store and you want to get some yogurt. Yay, I like yogurt with fruit for breakfast. But you pick up that little container of yogurt and maybe it has a happy heart on it. It's colorful, it's got fruit. It has to be healthy for you, right? Yeah, you need to flip it around and look at those ingredients because I remember doing this one day and I turned around this little thing of yogurt that I thought would have been healthy. And when I turned it around, it had 25 grams of added sugar. And I had to put it back because that was my entire sugar allowance for the whole day. I couldn't have any more for the whole day if I had that one little container. So that's where you have to start watching those things. Now, the great thing is as you do this, as this becomes your way of life, it gets easier because you know which brands you can buy that will keep you on track. You know, on Thursday, somebody's going to bring in maybe donuts. You don't want to be antisocial, but you might want to have a donut. Just reduce the amount of added sugar you have for the rest of the day. Everything is about balance, right? So know what you're putting in your body and balance those things. And I'll promise you, as you get that in line, you're going to feel better, because that was one of the first things I had to do after my heart attack. I will tell you personally that when I did not know this before my heart attack, what I just shared with you, as I learned it and I got my body back in balance with how much added sugar I was having, I haven't been on pain medication for fibromyalgia or osteoarthritis in years. That was gone. And now if I have some aches and pains, it's typically because I've overdone it. But that made a huge difference in the inflammation in my body. So just, tack that one down. We also want you to limit your sodium, especially if you have high blood pressure. You should have no more than 2,300 milligrams of added sodium per day. But if you're over 51 like I am, you need to reduce that down to 1,500 milligrams a day. So I promise to show you serving sizes. This is the easiest way I know to help. And this becomes your way of life too, because it's easy. You got your hands with you, right? You can even teach your kids to do this, and they can learn how to understand their portion size. So if you look at this starting with the palm of your hand, right? That is actually about 3 to 4 ounces. That would be your serving size if you were eating meat. That's it. 3 to 4 ounces. That's your serving size. Your thumbnail is 1 teaspoon. So if you're allowed 6 teaspoons of added sugar a day, 6 of your, little thumbs. For your whole thumb, that's 1 to 2 tablespoons. 2 hands cupped, that equals 1 ounce. And for that would be like your crackers, your pretzels, chips, things like that. That's your serving size. That's a good way to do it. 1 cupped hand, that is a half a cup. And that would be like your pasta, your rice, potatoes, especially your starchy vegetables, or your things that are a little higher on the carb side. That would be for that serving. Your fist is 1 cup. And oddly enough, for the children, this is their serving size too, but it's also the size of their stomach. So when you look at this for their serving size, using their hand, not yours, then that gives you that 1 cup, and that would be like your soup or your casseroles, the fresh fruit. So if you're trying to figure out portion sizes, this is a really easy way to do it. I'm not endorsing healthy choice, but when I found this, I thought, wow, that is a simple way. No more measuring your food, having to carry things around with you. Just use your hands. Eat with your hands. Maybe that's a good way to say it. So remember that what you put into your body and what you do for your body is going to make a big difference in your heart health. We shouldn't have to say it, but we are going to say it. Avoid all tobacco and vaping products. Smoking is the most preventable cause of death in our country. So if you smoke, get help and stop smoking. If you've never tried it, don't. Just stay away from it because it will lead you to a heart attack. Need to maintain a healthy weight for you. Learn ways to manage stress. And I know that sounds very simple, and it isn't, but I have been there. But it is something that you have to do. There are stress management tools that you can get, but you need to find ways, because stress is diabolically bad for your heart. Get better sleep. Sleep is very, very important to your heart health. Get help for anxiety or depression. There is a national organization, you may have heard of it, called NAMI. They do excellent work. They have chapters all over the country. If you go to their main website, NAMI.org, you can find someone near you, but get help, because anxiety and depression is also a red flag for heart disease. Find ways to move more on most days. According to the American Heart Association, we should be exercising at least 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Now, if you haven't been physically active for a while, talk to your doctor before you begin any new exercise routine. But even something like walking does wonderful health benefits. You can get outside on a nice day, get some vitamin D from that sunshine, breathe in some fresh air. It clears your head, get one with nature, but walking is a great form of exercise. For me, after my heart attack, one of my favorite things to do, because I was still struggling with so much physical pain, was water aerobics. And I lost that 20 pounds through water aerobics. You can dance. You can ride a bike. The best exercise is the exercise you will actually do. So find one or two things that you really like to do, and that's what you do. You don't have to do all of it at one time. You know, if you're trying to lose weight, you probably want to go 45 minutes to an hour, but you don't have to do that at all at one time. And if you have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, one of the best things that you can do to help balance your blood glucose out is to walk about 10 to 15 minutes after you eat. And that's great advice for the rest of us too. Include your family and support one another. Find some friends to kind of be your buddy in this. It's accountability, it's encouragement, it's inspiration, it's you're in this together. And don't forget that heart health begins in childhood. So everything I've been talking to you about doing for yourself today begins with our children and our grandkids, because that can keep them heart healthy for life. Another thing we want you to do for your heart health is to get your screenings and learn your personal risk for heart disease. This is a personal thing. This needs to be done for you. So by the age of 20, you should have your blood pressure checked, and do that every 2 years, your cholesterol checked every 4 to 6 years after that. Your BMI and waist circumference should be done every year, and get a risk factor assessment. Now, if you have that family history of early heart disease, you need to start at the age of 18. By the time you're 45, you should be getting all of the above done and get your blood glucose checked, and do that every 3 years. The caveat is, if you have abnormal results on any of those, you can expect that your healthcare provider is going to want you to repeat those more often. And that will depend upon your continuum of health for those issues. Now, here is something I really want to share with you, because this has been around for a long time, but a lot of people don't know about it. It's like the best kept secret. It is the most advanced way that we have of identifying heart disease early in someone. It is a screening. It's called a coronary artery calcium scan. The current protocols recommend that by the time a man is 45, because that's when we start seeing heart disease in men, is by the age of 45, women by the age of 55. This is a screening you need to talk to your doctor about getting. For those that have high cholesterol, perhaps your doctor has mentioned a statin, a cholesterol medication. Please know that the guidelines were updated in 2018. And according to the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology, the guidelines for physicians are that before they prescribe a statin drug, a cholesterol drug for you, they should do this scan, because you could have someone who has wonderful cholesterol numbers, but they have raging heart disease, just like you can have somebody who has horrible cholesterol numbers and they have none. Combined with our biometric screenings and the coronary calcium scan, it has a 90% effectiveness rate for identifying those that are at higher risk of a heart attack. Now, the exceptions would be if you have a family history of early heart disease. And what we mean by that is that if your father or brother had a cardiac event before the age of 55, or your mother or sister before the age of 65, that puts you at higher risk of heart disease because you share the same DNA. I get asked that question all the time about grandparents and cousins and aunts and uncles. But what we look at first is who shares your DNA that has had a cardiac event and at what age. We also expand that conversation to ask about their lifestyle, what they ate, did they smoke, what was their stress like if they had a high stress job. We look at those things as well, because just having a DNA component does not mean that you are guaranteed to have heart disease. Just like if you have great genes, but you don't take care of your body, there will be a reckoning if you don't take care of your body. Great genes does not buy you a go pass. So that's what we start with. So if you have that family history, that is one of the identifying markers that we look for. High cholesterol, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes is a big one. If you have type 2 diabetes, you are 2 to 4 times at higher risk of having a heart attack. Obese or overweight, 70% of our country is obese or overweight. Among our African American community, our people of color, it is closer to 85%. If you're a smoker or former smoker, and if you're a woman who's gone through early menopause, if you have any of those, then the recommendation is you can get this coronary artery calcium scan done as early as age 40, because we want to catch heart disease early. We want early diagnosis so that we can do early intervention and save lives. So this is something that you can talk to your doctor about. Now, the ones that would not be included in this are those that have had a cardiac event. If you've had a heart attack, if you've had stents, if you've gone through diagnostics with a cardiologist, this is a screening. It would not be for you because you've already been diagnosed with heart disease. But for those of you that want to know what's going on in the inside, because those numbers on the paper do not tell you the whole story. But when we do this CT scan, and by we, I mean the people that do that, the cardiology groups, they're taking a CT scan of your heart. They're looking at your arteries. If there's signs of calcification, calcified plaque in your arteries, they can tell by how much, if you have heart disease, and by how much you have heart disease, and then they can determine what they need to do next for you. The screening is not typically covered by insurance, but it takes less than 10 minutes. You don't even have to undress for it. Cost is typically around $100. And I will tell you as a testimonial that this scan saved my husband's life, because he was one of those that did not have the bad cholesterol numbers. He was one of those that passed the stress test and his EKG was fine. And on paper, he was not somebody you would think of as being weeks away from a fatal heart attack. But when he did the coronary artery calcium scan, he had significant heart disease. He was at extremely high risk, and most of his was in his widowmaker. This 10-minute scan saved his life. And here's something I want you to remember. And I love this quote because, this helps me every day. But we tell people, and we're using Maya Angelou here, who said, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, you do better. So hopefully today you've learned some things that you can do for you. In closing, I want to make sure that you know the warning signs of a heart attack. Typically, they are chest pain or tightness in the chest. Some people talk about it feeling like an elephant sitting on your chest. Pain or heaviness in the arms, shortness of breath, cold sweats, sudden dizziness, unexplained fatigue, nausea or vomiting, stomach pain or frequent heartburn, pain in the jaw or upper back. And I will tell for the women that are watching this right now, women typically do not have the chest pain or the tightness in the chest or down in the arms. That is something that's more common in the men, although the men can have these other symptoms too. But in women, typically the symptoms are going to be a lot more subtle. There are women that don't have symptoms of coronary heart disease. About 65% of the women who die suddenly from heart disease did not complain about prior symptoms. About half of the men follow suit in that. But it's important for you to know your risk for heart disease, your risk for a heart attack or stroke, so that you can be proactive and you can know your body and pay attention to your body. If you're experiencing any of those symptoms, call 911. Don't wait. Don't wait to be driven to the hospital. Call them because they can begin working on you immediately. Time is heart muscle, and the sooner you get help, the better chance they have of saving your life. So the three tenets of our organization is awareness, action, and advocacy. Before you can do something, you've got to be aware about it. You've got to educate yourself about it. You can go to our website, the Heart2HeartFoundation.org. We have a lot of free heart health educational materials. We are adding more this month. We're going to be expanding all of those. We are community partners with the Heart Truth and with the Healthy Heart Network, as well as the Professional Nurses Association. They give us a lot of free materials that we can pass on to you, and we're happy to do that. We also have more educational videos on our Heart2Heart YouTube channel. Most of the people that follow us watch our live seminars on our Facebook page, but you can catch them in either place. We want you to take action. I want you to take the information that you have learned today, and I want you to continue educating yourself on the subject of heart health and what you need to do for yourself. I want you to get your screenings. I want you to learn the questions to talk to your doctor and to become your own best advocate, because nobody can do that better than you. And then I want you to become one of our advocates. Volunteer, share your story with others. We have a group of women called our Red Heart Mamas. That is our advocacy group for women. We have a private Facebook group. I think we have around 915 members right now. And we share, we educate one another. We train them how to share this message of hope with other women in their lives. We provide special opportunities for education and social times together. And it's a wonderful growing group. We would love to have you participate in that and to keep in touch with us. Our website again is the Heart2HeartFoundation.org. You can find us on Facebook at the Heart2Heart Foundation. Very easy to find us. And then our YouTube channel, just search for the Heart2Heart Foundation and subscribe. On our videos is a little red heart. Just click on that and you can subscribe. We're adding more videos, educational videos there all the time. And I mentioned our Red Heart Mamas group. That is our Red Heart Mamas group on Facebook. And we have a wonderful group of women. We do service projects. One of the projects that we raise funds for through our Red Heart Mamas is our scholarship program. So for women who are at risk of a heart attack or stroke, we want them to get those advanced screenings and participate in our lifestyle coaching. But if they have financial disparities, and so many women do today, we want to be able to help them do that. And our scholarship program will pay for those advanced screenings and cover the cost of the lifestyle coaching so that we can help those women. And that's what our funding through our Red Heart Mamas goes for. And finally, remember this, that the better you love your heart, the longer it can love you back. So show your heart some love today.